Criminals thought that their messages were encrypted and far away from the eyes of police.
What turned these seemingly ordinary women into infamous killers?
About 4 o'clock in the morning, I just heard few bangs, and then it wake me up.
Their pasts are full of pain, betrayal, and shocking choices.
Police say that in total 600 people subscribed to this communication service.
It's a peaceful night in a quiet town.
400 here in Australia. Of those, 38 have been arrested and more raids are expected today.
Don't miss the untold truth behind their violent crimes. Watch now. The kind where streetlights flicker and families sleep soundly, believing danger is far away. But inside one home, the silence breaks with a scream, sharp and desperate, cutting through the calm like a knife. A mother, the kind everyone trusts, the kind who bakes cookies and waves hello, has turned into something unrecognizable. Her hands, once gentle, are now covered in blood. Her eyes, once filled with warmth, are now wild with a darkness no one saw coming. The trust of those around her is shattered. Lives she touched lie broken. The fear and heartbreak left behind will never fade. But she's not alone. Across America, in the cold gray cells of maximum security prisons, there are women like her. Women whose names send shivers down your spine. Aileen Wuornos, Susan Smith, Griselda Blanco. These women, once considered ordinary, now stand as symbols of unimaginable horror. It wasn't always this way. These were women who lived in neighborhoods just like ours. They were daughters, mothers, and neighbors. But somewhere along the way, their lives took a dark turn. Aileen Wuornos, a hitchhiker in Florida in the late 80s and 90s, killed 7 men, each murder calculated and cold. Susan Smith, once a trusted mother in South Carolina, drowned her 2 children, Michael and Alex, in October 1994, a crime she tried to cover up with lies. Griselda Blanco, the infamous cocaine godmother, ruled Miami with an iron fist, ordering murders in her drug empire. They were ordinary women, but something inside them broke. Was it pain? Anger? A twisted need for control? Whatever it was, it led them to commit heinous acts. Now, behind bars, they are locked away, the world left to wonder what turned them into killers so feared that society could not forget their names. This isn't just about crimes, it's a journey into understanding the lives of these women. From the moment they took the lives of others, to the isolation they now face behind cold, steel bars. Their stories are not just about murder, but about human tragedy, loss, and the lingering question: what made them snap? In this journey, we ask, could we have seen the signs? Could we have helped before it was too late? These women, once ordinary, now live as reminders of the darkness hidden within the most unexpected of places. The story of these women doesn't begin with murder. It begins with pain, pain so deep, so unrelenting, that it reshaped them into people capable of violence, so shocking it would be hard to imagine. They weren't born killers. Their beginnings were marked by struggle, trauma, and loss. This is the story of Aileen Wuornos, Susan Smith, Tiffany Moss, Diane Diaz, and Griselda Blanco. 5 women whose lives took unimaginable turns, forever changing not only their futures but the lives of those around them. Aileen Wuornos was born in Michigan, unwanted from the start. Her mother abandoned her when she was just a baby, and she was raised by her grandparents. But her home was not a safe place. Her grandfather beat her, and her grandmother turned a blind eye to the abuse. By the time she was 11, Aileen was already trading sex for cigarettes. Her innocence was stolen at an early age. By 15, she was pregnant and abandoned. This life of rejection and abuse left her angry, distrustful, and desperate. Was this pain what pushed her to walk the highways of Florida, killing men who picked her up? To her, they were threats, symbols of the world that hurt her, people who could take from her, just like the world had. Susan Smith, born and raised in South Carolina, had a different but equally painful start. In her home, her stepfather was the source of torment. He abused her, leaving her feeling trapped and broken. By her teen years, she was struggling with depression and trying to find a way out. She even tried to end her life, swallowing pills, but she survived. Yet the weight of her pain didn't lift. By the time she was in her 20s, she was married, with 2 young sons, but her suffering continued. On October 25, 1994, that pain reached its peak. She drove her 2 little boys, Michael, aged 3, and Alex, aged 14 months, to John D. Long Lake. She strapped them into their car seats, looked at their innocent faces one last time, and let the car roll into the lake. It sank slowly, trapping her children inside as they screamed for help. Susan watched, then walked away, leaving the cries of her boys to be swallowed by the water. She later lied to the world, claiming a black man stole her car with her children inside. The truth came out, revealing that her sons died at her hands, and their community was left shattered, forever haunted by the trust they had in her. Tiffany Moss had her own kind of pain. Growing up in Georgia, her home was filled with chaos. She lived a life of instability, moving from place to place, never finding a place to call home. By the time she became a stepmother to a man, a bright 10-year-old girl, her mental health was in serious decline. Tiffany was struggling with anger, paranoia, and a deep sense of brokenness. She failed to see Aman's pain as her stepdaughter wasted away. Tiffany locked away the food Aman so desperately needed, ignoring her pleas. Aman's body grew thinner and weaker, but Tiffany did nothing. For weeks, she watched her child waste away, all the while doing nothing to help. In 2013, Aman died alone in agony. Tiffany and her husband tried to cover up the crime, burning the body and stuffing it into a trash bag, hoping to erase the evidence. But the truth came out, and the world was left to wonder how no one saw the signs, how no one noticed the suffering this young girl endured. Diane Diaz of Oregon had another kind of pain. Raised by strict parents, with a father who demanded perfection and a mother who was emotionally distant, Diane rebelled. She married young and had 3 kids, but her need for freedom never waned. Her mental health deteriorated over time, and by May 19, 1983, the desperation for freedom became unbearable. Diane drove her 3 children, Christ, aged 8, Cheryl, aged 5, and Danny, aged 3, down a quiet road. She pulled over, turned off the engine, and took out a .22 caliber pistol. One by one, she shot them. Cheryl died immediately. Christ and Danny survived, but their lives would never be the same. Diane later claimed that a stranger had done it, but the truth was revealed through her children's testimony. The community was left reeling. How could a mother, someone trusted with her children's lives, do this? Finally, Griselda Blanco grew up in Colombia, where she was exposed to violence and survival at a young age. Poverty was a constant companion, and the streets were filled with drugs and crime. By her teens, Griselda had already started running errands for cartels. Her hunger for power and money grew, and soon she was ordering murders to solidify her empire. She built a drug empire in Miami in the 70s and 80s, leaving behind a trail of dead bodies. She ordered hits on her enemies, on innocent bystanders, anyone who threatened her power. Griselda became known as the cocaine godmother, a ruthless figure in the world of crime. These women were shaped by their pain. Their tragedies, their broken pasts, led them down a path of destruction. While these beginnings don't excuse their actions, they do help us understand how pain can turn to violence, how desperation can lead to choices we can't comprehend. Aileen, Susan, Tiffany, Diane, and Griselda may have started as ordinary women, but the wounds they carried shaped them into something unrecognizable. Once ordinary women, now behind cold bars, Aileen Wuornos, Susan Smith, Tiffany Moss, Diane Diaz, and Griselda Blanco live in America's toughest prisons. Their lives are no longer their own. Aileen in Florida screams in her cell, haunted by her past. Susan writes letters, her hand shaky as she asks for forgiveness, but the faces of her lost children are always with her. Tiffany sits alone in silence, her mind heavy with guilt for the child she let die. Diane, in California, manipulates and schemes, her smile hiding her darkness. Griselda uses her power to control even from behind bars, her reputation still striking fear. These women, now isolated, struggle with the weight of their choices and the memories they cannot escape. The journey doesn't end here. You won't believe what happens when a detective becomes the prime suspect. Don't miss our next shocking video, when a detective becomes the prime suspect. A true crime shock. Subscribe now and stay tuned for more gripping true crime stories. Trust us, you'll want to know what happens next.